Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. I'm Spencer Simpson.
And I'm Kelton Howell. Before we jump into today's episode, we've got an exciting announcement. Today is December 1st, which means that it is time to kick off December.
Yep, December, if you joined us last year, is our 31-day deck building challenge. We've chosen 31 prompts to brew a deck around, and so each day of December, we're going to publish a YouTube short with our submissions for the December challenge. So day 1, 2, 3, with each prompt all the way through 31. But you get to participate at home as well.
Yeah, so you can submit your own brew on our Discord. You just pick a commander for the prompt for the day and 10 key cards that best represent your deck's theme or strategy. And then at the end of the month, we're going to pick 4 of our favorite brews, and we are going to be building those decks and playing them on a gameplay episode of the Commander Pod. And each of the 4 chosen decks will be awarded a $25 TCG Player gift card.
Yes, it was really, really fun last year to have everyone participating in Discord to be able to look through the decks, pick some to play with, and then send out those gift cards. So make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of the prompts, and you can join our Discord to submit your 10-card brew each day. We're going to put links in the video description of this episode. I think we put them in most of our episodes, and it's on our channel as well to join our Discord and start going with December. Join us.
Absolutely. It should be a lot of fun. So this week, though, I do want to revisit a topic from earlier on in our channel's history. So before the Commander bracket system was announced, the beta that we are currently still in, it's a long beta, we did an entire series on Commander power levels. And one of the things that we discussed as part of our series was this concept of power level outliers. So as a quick recap, if you haven't seen those episodes or you haven't visited our website on the matter, I did want to read a section from our commanderpowerlevels.com website about power level outliers. I'm going to read that really quick. So cards that are considerably more powerful than the rest of your deck are considered power level outliers. Including such cards, especially in low quantities, doesn't make a deck higher power, but rather makes it inconsistent. And we believe that a good deck is a consistent deck, not a deck that can win consistently, but a deck that consistently performs at its intended power level. As such, we start evaluating power levels during deck building and try to avoid power level outliers.
Yeah, so I think the thing that best illustrates this would be something like Rhystic Study, which is getting a lot of discussion right now around being on the ban list and stuff like that, or at least was at some point, right?
Yeah.
I guess a couple weeks ago, it was talked about specifically about being put on the ban list potentially and shaking up the format. I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen, but Rhystic Study, being such an iconic card, is a best-in-class version of card advantage, right?
Yep.
And so if you just take a deck that is supposed to be, that is a low power deck, plays generally not very high card quality, and you slot in a Rhystic Study, that is now a power level outlier in that deck and is considerably more powerful than the other cards in the deck. So in the games that you draw Rhystic Study, your deck is going to perform better, but it's not because your deck is better on average, right? Though technically it averages out to that your deck is better more often.
Sure.
But
when you have Rhystic Study.
Right. But when you have Rhystic Study, so it's inconsistently better, right? You're not able to consistently perform at the level you were intending to. And that was the point of our power level system, right? Was the intent of deck building towards a desired play experience and power level. And I think that's where they're moving with brackets as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think Game Changers captures that entirely.
I agree because we didn't have like a list of cards that fit in at each power level, and it really was about the spirit and the intent of the deck that you were building. But we would say like, yeah, a Rhystic Study or a One Ring would be a power level outlier at a low power deck or in a mid power deck or something like that. And so you would aim to then exclude that from those decks. You just wouldn't include them if they are a power level outlier. I think that term does not work as well with the bracket system because we do have cards that are explicitly not to be included in certain brackets, and those are called Game Changers. And I think that overall, Game Changers has worked very, very well in regards to the bracket system. I don't necessarily agree with every card that is or is not on the Game Changer list, but I do love that it creates a space for powerful cards to still be played, but be restricted in some way. That being said, there are cards that are not on the Game Changers list that I still think you need to be careful about including in your deck. So I've been having this conversation with Spencer, and I've been calling them haymakers, just like as a term to describe these types of cards that we're talking about. They're not necessarily restricted from a Game Changers list, and they're not necessarily. It's not that they shouldn't be included in your decks because they're power level outliers, though they may be. But haymakers are just like really powerful cards that you do need to be careful with, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Before we start, I think listing some of these cards that we think we've talked about them at length at many different episodes.
Sure.
The cards we think that maybe should be on the Game Changers list. I think I agree with you that the Game Changers do a really good job of saying, hey, these are cards that you shouldn't be playing because they're just exceptionally powerful, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that our power level system missed with essentially including what would be like considered probably soft bans at different power levels, right?
Yeah.
Where
and I don't know that it wasn't that it missed it. I think we decided very deliberately that we didn't want to include soft bans, and that it was kind of up to like whatever your play group sees as like right? If it doesn't work for your play group, then don't play it, right? And if your play group is like, run like all the free interaction, then run that's not a power level outlier because it is fitting into the spirit and the intent of whatever the play experience is that you're trying to have. I think like brackets are trying to create a common shared language across all play groups. And that is like a much different task than whatever works for your play group.
Sure. Yeah, I do think that there was some part of me that was, when we were working on the power level system, understood that we were working on it within microcosms of your playgroup and this playgroup and this playgroup, and also was hoping that it could evolve into shared language that we could have around Rule Zero conversations, right? That you could take this to an LGS and do that. And so I do think if we're trying to talk about the commander power levels, right? The commander pod power levels or whatever, as a system for having Rule Zero conversations prior to bracket system existing, I do think that it was a very conscious decision to not actually like explicitly ban anything and have them be implicit bans because they are best of.
Yeah, and we use that term a lot. We would say like and best of or best in class. Yeah.
Right, and we'd even give examples, right? We would give examples of the free spells and we give examples of risk study. So I do think what Game Changers catch is saying, hey, these are the best of. Yeah. And so you probably shouldn't be playing these in these lower power levels. The problem is there's not any additional delineation. But then you get to a point where you're doing ban lists per power level, which is like, or Game Changers lists per power level or whatever.
And I think as also like me as an entrenched player, like me as like I play a lot of Magic, I actually wouldn't mind that at all. Like I wouldn't mind having a ban list per bracket. That would be an absolute nightmare for people who are learning to play the game. So I do think that like this implementation of the Game Changers list works very well, but there also is no hard line. There's no clear line to say this is where the best of class cards ends. Right. And then everything else is fair game, because I don't think everything else is fair game. Right. Because if we like Deflecting Swat just came off of the Game Changers list. That is, premium free interaction. That is really, really good interaction. As is like Mana Drain, which has somehow never been on the Game Changers list. It is Counterspell plus a ritual stapled onto it. Right?
Yeah, it's just strictly better counterspell. And to your point, Deflecting Swat has been on and off again, so it's clearly in a gray area.
Yeah.
That you don't just like windmill slam it into your bracket 2 deck, right?
Yep. Yeah. So I don't think by something not being on the Game Changers list, I don't think that's like a go ahead to be like, yeah, play it in bracket 2. Fill your deck with all of the most powerful effects that aren't on the Game Changer list and call it a bracket 2. So one thing that I actually think does a very good job of describing the spirit of brackets 2 and 3 and can help us maybe differentiate some of this is the graphic that was put together by Rachel Weeks. I will post a link to it in the description and I will put it on the screen. I'm just going to read really quick what brackets 2 and 3 say. So bracket 2 is core, and it says players expect decks to be mechanically focused with some cards chosen to maximize creativity and or entertainment. Win conditions to be incremental, telegraphed on the board, and disruptible, and gameplay to be low pressure, proactive, and considerate, letting each deck showcase its plan, and to play at least 8 turns before anyone wins or loses. Fast forward to, bracket 3, which is upgraded, and it says players expect decks to be powered up with strong synergy and high card quality. They can effectively disrupt opponents. Win conditions that can be played from hand in one turn, usually because of steadily accrued resources. Gameplay to feature many proactive and reactive plays, and to play at least 6 turns before anyone wins or loses. And then the big difference being that you can also have up to 3 game changers in bracket 3. And one thing that I hadn't really noticed about this graphic before revisiting it in preparation for this was at the top where it shows the bracket numbers, and it shows kind of how they progress between each bracket number. It actually like starts in 2, and the arrow goes down to 1 to say the difference is theme. And then from 2, it goes up to 3 and says the difference is staples. So that actually for me is like a really big signpost to say, yeah, all of these powerful cards that we're talking about that are considered like staples, right? Like things like Deflecting Swat and Mana Drain. Like that is probably the difference between brackets 2 and 3.
Sure. Yeah. And while there is a range in bracket 3 that we feel like is overly
broad,
pretty. Yeah, I was gonna say pretty cavernous divide between the bottom and top of bracket 3.
Yeah.
I really like this graphic, and I know that I've seen it before and read this, and I think my brain is still stuck on the original release of the bracket system, or even the April update to the bracket system, where they weren't talking about intent as explicitly as they have been in the past couple months, right? Where, and I think that is something that goes really well hand in hand with game changers. And I think that's kind of the point I was trying to make earlier, was that while our system was very like, when you see it intrinsic a little bit, the game changers are very explicit, which is really good. And I think you need some combination of those to say, hey, this is explicit, the cards that are very good, and this is also explicit experiences people are looking for. And I like this difference in staples, difference in speed, change, and really gives me a better concept for, okay, my Garth deck is probably a 3. And if I want it to actually be a 3, I still can add in Deflecting Swat, some other stuff that I think would do really well in the deck, and have it be a 3 still.
Okay, so that is one of the questions that I wanted to get to as part of this conversation. Is that's great. We can say staples belong in 3. That's still super vague. Like we, sure. I think once again, as experienced players, can say like, okay, Deflecting Swat, that's a staple. Mana Drain, that's a staple. We have a list of him here that we can talk about if we want to. A lot of those more powerful cards probably belong in bracket 3. But does that just mean that every bracket 3 deck should be running them? And I don't think so. And this has been our main criticism of the bracket system forever, is that bracket 3 is too broad, right? Because what they're saying by limiting it to 3 game changers in bracket 3 is you can play anything else, right? You can, if it's not a game changer, play it in bracket 3. I don't know that that's right. Like your Garth deck I would say is a bracket 3 deck, even though it's not running game changers. But that doesn't mean you should just then like now put in every best of effect that's not a game changer in your Garth deck. I don't, even though it's technically, like, not only is it technically bracket 3, but it also fits into the spirit of bracket 3 if you were to do that, right? Because like the spirit of bracket 3 is that like win conditions can be played from hand in one turn. So you can win in a single turn in bracket 3. And gameplay is supposed to be very proactive and very reactive. Right? So like I think that it's not like you're just like being letter of the law. You're also being spirit of the law and really trying to I just think 3 is so broad. Like there's just so much room within bracket 3.
Yeah, either that, or 3 is exactly what we think it is, and 2 is very broad, right? Like, I think there's room for kind of both of them to be pretty broad here. Yes. Where, like, if the difference is staples, then sweet, I know exactly what 3 is. But now 2 has this big range, right, of of what
Yeah.
should be played. I talk about Garth all the time. I'm like turning into the Garth spewing machine.
Sure.
But it's like the only deck right now that I play that I'm really, really trying to nail down
As a
where it
bracket,
belongs.
yeah.
As a bracket. Yeah, absolutely. And so when I read these descriptions, and again, I don't know if these are the end all be all of the descriptions, but Rachel Weeks is on the committee, so clearly
Yes.
this is something she's discussed with people and laid out as a unofficial official graphic for describing these, right?
Yes.
And I think the first paragraph in each of these is really something to me that is helpful to think about where Garth is positioned, because in bracket 3, right, it says decks are powered up with strong synergy and high card quality. They can effectively disrupt opponents. I'm playing a fair amount of interaction in Garth. I'm playing very high card quality, right? I've got like Legolas's Quick Reflexes. I've got Bloom Tender, Birds of Paradise, both of the
Yeah.
whatever their things are, the 3-color tapper dorks.
Yeah, and Bloom Tender is one that I would consider like that fits my description of like a haymaker. That is like near best in class effect, especially for a 5-color deck, but it's not on the game changer list, right? But
Right.
but it is one of those things that's like really pushing the card quality and the efficiency of the card really, really high.
Yeah, and absolutely puts it in like a bracket 3 area, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm also playing now the untapped energy is good in Garth, and I don't think that's a bad theme to be playing in Garth.
Sure.
But I am playing a bunch of wizards because I was like, wizard sub theme sounds fun. I'm playing
Sure.
a bunch of 3-pip cards because he makes a Black Lotus. So
Yep.
let's do some 3-pip cards. And I'm playing relatively bad versions of those because the good versions were too
strong.
good.
Yeah.
And so Garth is landing in this middle ground of like, let me read bracket 2, the first paragraph really quick again. Decks are mechanically focused with some cards chosen to maximize creativity and or entertainment. Those last things that I'm saying about Garth fit in
Into
that
bracket 2. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I do think like there's this weird middle ground where maybe if you want to do that, you can't be playing these very powerful effects
Yeah.
to fit in this system particularly well.
Yeah,
Right?
I do think that's a really interesting point. Like, do you just embrace creativity or embrace like card quality? And it's like a little bit more binary than we're thinking it is. Like, well, I want to play creative cards and efficient cards. And it's hard to balance those two things. That's kind of the same thing that I'm running into with the Corvold Foods deck that I made. I feel like 75% of the time that I play it, if it's very solidly into a bracket 2, and it doesn't have very many feel bads. Occasionally, 1 in 4 games, I'll have a game where I'm like, wow, this just popped off. And that's because there are some cards in the deck that just have a very high card quality to them, but are also thematic. And does that mean that I can't play these really cool cards that really shine in this thematic strategy? And that would be a bummer if so. Like if you just can't play any of those cards in bracket 2, then that is like a bit of a bummer. As a follow-up question, since we're talking about staples and since we've kind of honed in on that being the big difference between bracket 2 and bracket 3, within it, we feel like bracket 3 is overly broad. Is there a chance that we are being overly sensitive to that? And are staples really that big of an issue? Like if you're in for, one deflecting SWAT, is it that big of a deal if you're also just running Mana Drain and Diabolic Intent and, like, I don't know, Kindred Discovery and Exploration and Nyxbloom Ancient and Black Market Connections? Like, is it that big of a deal if you're just then running all the staples?
Yeah, I
think so. I think yes. I think personally I would say yes, but maybe we are over indexing. And I have heard people say, like, we have talked about how much we are concerned that Mana Drain could show up in a bracket 2 play scenario. And people are like, It's Mana Drain. It's not that big of a deal. It's a counter spell. And I don't know. I don't think it's way better than counterspell. It's counterspell plus, right?
I was thinking literally yesterday.
Yeah.
I was thinking about my early career playing Magic, and I bought a Mana Drain because I was excited about it, and a Rhystic Study and a Smothering Tithe, and put them all in my Garth deck, played with our friend who doesn't play very much, mana drained his 6-mana spell, and then turned around having had a Smothering Tithe on the battlefield and just like brain geysered for 1,000,000.
Yeah.
And I, looking back, I was like, that is like so crappy of me to have done.
Sure. But 1,000, if you have a mana drain in your hand, there is no reason you should not counter a 6-mana spell.
100%.
Like,
100%.
Yeah.
And you're going to see so many you're going to see Hex in a bracket 2 deck, right? Someone's going to play Hex.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, sweet, thank you. That is I can mana drain that. But I do think in the spirit of bracket 2, you shouldn't be playing mana drain.
Agreed.
But
in the spirit of bracket, should you be playing it in bracket 3?
Sure. I think so. Now looking at this, but I do think my new take, I think,
Okay.
is that if
I can't wait for this.
I don't know if this is my new
Can
take. Don't
I
hold me to
clip this and make a short out of it? Whatever
Yeah,
this
sure.
is going to be.
Yeah, send it to everyone. Clip it, send it everywhere. Is that maybe bracket 3 is pretty narrow and bracket 2 is really broad, or at least the lines are a little bit blurred between them? Because I do agree with you. Like in for a penny, in for a pound. Are you playing all of the staples? I don't know. But that's kind of how I feel about like making Garth bracket 3 now. I'm like, well, cool. I'm going to run Kiki Jiki instead of Insurrection, and I'm going to run Nyxbloom Ancient instead of Genesis Wave. And now Garth can just like pop off like Garth was doing before.
So does that mean that the only difference between 3... So I'm going to pull up the graphic again here. Hopefully
Sure,
I remember
yeah.
to do this in editing. But looking at the difference between 3 and 4, the little arrow at the top of the thing says the difference is speed. So optimized, bracket 4 optimized reads decks to be lethal, consistent, and fast, designed to take people down as fast as possible. They do not adhere to the CEDH metagame. Win conditions to vary from archetype to archetype, but can end a game quickly and suddenly. Gameplay to be explosive and powerful, featuring huge threats and efficient disruptions to match, to play at least 4 turns before anyone wins or loses. So is the only thing that makes these games fast, explosive, all the words, all the adjectives that they use to describe this, is the only thing game changers?
That's a good
like,
question.
is that really it that differentiates brackets 3 and 4?
So
Right?
potentially, I mean, a lot of them are the most efficient tutors, so that's how
Yeah.
you're finding your win conditions.
Which is to like be consistent, decks to be lethal, consistent, and fast. And most of what's on the game changer list is like tutors and fast mana, right?
Yeah, right, and like, and the main difference between 4 and 5 being like, I guess, CDH combos. I just think like, so when I think about Garth again, or I'm gonna keep talking about Garth. When I think about Garth again, I'm playing a lot of mana dorks, like, because the goal is to get out Garth quickly, because he's a 5-mana commander. And if I'm just not like, if I'm not trying to get Garth out, what am I doing in the deck, right? And maybe that's like too far on the bracket 4 side, and I need to cut some dorks out and say I'm gonna play Mana Rocks instead, or whatever, and slow it down by a turn or two instead of just like dumping mana dorks from my hand and just like going that quick. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I think. I think I'm talking too much and getting ahead of myself in saying that I have new takes.
No,
but I do think
I
I do think this was educational for me, at least, to look at this bracket a little bit, or look at this graphic about the brackets a little bit more closely.
Yeah.
Because I do think that helps me. Because for me, 3, again, we've talked about a bunch, was so broad, and I think this has helped me think, okay, maybe 3 is a little more narrow than I thought, and for me in 2 now, that means like, cool, then I'm just not going to play some of these like sweet staples in 2, and I'm just making like a thematic deck. And for me, that kind of feels like with our brackets that 2 is closer to maybe mid power than I thought.
Yeah, that is just
And-
missing staples.
Yeah, exactly. And so it feels like 2, 3, 4 are like the mid, high of our bracket system, and then 1 and 2, and then low and low mid are kind of lumped into 1.
So
or
maybe
the
2 is
low
just
end of-
too broad.
Yeah.
Yeah, because look, I mean, I think most of the things that would determine if something is like a game changer or a haymaker, based on what we're talking about, is like it's providing mana advantage, it's providing card advantage, it's a tutor that's providing consistency, and then it's somehow like disruptive, like something like a Dranith Magistrate or Mass Land Denial, or something kind of Staxy or a Prison Effect or something like that. I don't know. So like I feel like those are generally the things that would determine the quote unquote like power level of something, and that the worst of them have been bucketed into game changers. And so they're like, okay, these only happen at 4. And so maybe the way that you manage and self-police haymakers for yourself is anything that's not a game changer, but falls into like a best of in one of those categories. Like just keep that to bracket 3. Like just put the staples in bracket 3 and then just play everything else in bracket 2.
That's honestly, that feels like a good solution for me, because that's kind of how I was feeling about mid power, and I felt like I had a really good grasp in our power level system, about what mid power was and felt like, and I was having a hard time translating that to the bracket system.
Yeah, I agree, because it didn't really match up with bracket 3.
Yeah, exactly, which falls in the middle, ostensibly, right? And so I think really that shift helps me a lot. Though in high mid, there's some things on the game changer list I might have considered in high mid, but I do think so. Like at bracket 3, right? Like maybe like Fierce Guardianship, I could have played at bracket 3 or whatever. But I do think the game changers list allows for that I can, right? Like I can play Fierce Guardianship. I get 3 of them. Yeah, exactly. So I do think, and tutors explicitly we were not playing very many of, or at least the most efficient and quickest ones, still in high mid. And so I think this is actually making a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, the more we talk through it, I like it better.
Yeah.
I think I was of the opinion that the game changers list was too small. That it's like, add Mana Drain, keep Deflecting Swat on, add like a few other cards, like kind of get it, stretch it a little bit more. And I also will always advocate for taking more cards off the ban list and putting them onto the game changers list, because I think that's a very elegant solution. But if this is the way that we are supposed to be interpreting this, I would rather make the game changer list smaller and just be like, because there are cards on here where I'm like, yeah, this is a staple, but it's not providing like the fast mana, the huge card advantage, or the like Staxy elements. Like I mean, let me try and pick one off of here now without
crop
trying.
rotation.
Yeah, okay. Well, crop rotation I think is crazy that it's on here. I mean, in the sense that like you can crop rotation for like a Gaia's Cradle, and like now all of a sudden you have a ton of mana. But guess what? Gaia's Cradle is on the game changer list. So you can kind of do that anyways. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's other cards on here that just don't really need to be on here if that is the way that we are supposed, like Orcish Bowmasters. I actually think is such a good one. Like, why not punish people for drawing more cards than they should each turn, right?
Yeah,
like Orcish Bowmasters, that's just a good card. But it's not like, it's not providing any card advantage or mana advantage, and it's not preventing people from doing things. It's just punishing people for doing what is ostensibly the best thing to be doing in Commander.
Yeah, I do think Orcish Bowmasters is one that scales decently well with power level, right?
Yeah.
Because as people are drawing tons and tons and tons of cards at higher powers, Orcish Bowmasters is amazing. And at lower power levels, where people may be playing 4 or 5 mana creatures and drawing fewer cards, Orcish Bowmasters will have fewer targets.
Yeah,
and can make a big thing, but is also a very small creature that can be dealt with. And you have creature removal in those power levels.
And to anybody in the comments who's going to explain to me how it works with the Wheel of Fortune, I completely understand, because I play Vintage Cube and the Wheels deck is my favorite deck to draft. So yes, I understand how busted it is that I can just like shoot somebody in the face for 21 damage.
Sure, but you can
on
also.
A wheel.
But is Narset in the Game Changers list?
Yeah,
is she in the Game Changers list?
Yeah.
Oh, it is? Oh, never mind.
Narset
Okay, I was going to say you could also... Okay. You can also just do that. But maybe that's why. Maybe they're like, we want to keep people from doing Wheels stuff, I guess. I don't know.
But why? Wheels is one of the... Okay, yeah. I think it's one of the best archetypes or like sub-things that you can have to deck. I think it's very fun. But I mean, it's like... We still have Shieldred. You can still just like Wheel plus Shieldred. And that drains everybody for 14.
Yeah, wheel
Right?
plus Nekusar, wheel plus
Yeah.
Sprawling Crawler. Like, there's a bunch of things that still do that.
Yeah.
I
So
yeah,
yeah, I am. If this is how we're supposed to be interpreting it, that it's like, yeah, game changers affect bracket 4. Everything else is a staple and belongs in bracket 3. Yeah, Orcish Bowmaster should probably just be a staple, and we should probably just make the game changers list a little bit smaller.
yeah. Can I actually advocate for maybe the other direction? Is
Yeah,
adding
hit
some
me.
of these cards that we think are on the edge of to remove temptation of playing them in bracket 2
Yeah.
and having everyone understand like what a staple is.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, and that is one thing that I would love to see. Is like I do love that in the graphic that Rachel put together, it says the difference is staples. That is a term that is not mentioned anywhere or given
Sure.
any description as to what a staple is, and that could be difficult for newer players.
Sure, and yeah, more entrenched players will know what staples are, but nowadays the release cadence is such that staples,
Yeah.
right,
Orcish
like,
Bowmasters is a new card,
is
relatively
a newish
new,
card
right?
that is probably a commander staple, right?
Or like
Wan
Wan
Shi
Shi
Tong
Tong.
just got
Yeah.
got printed. Yeah, exactly. Is probably now a staple.
Yeah.
And the Cabbage Merchant or
Yeah.
Badgermole Cub or whatever are now like staples, and so it's like. How are you defining staples? And I do think
Do you think there should be a second list?
I think no. I don't think that needs to be
Okay.
second. Maybe I think they probably should categorize the list and say and potentially add in. You can maybe do more than 3 game changers, but add more things to the game changer list and categorize them because I think that's something that was really helpful for me in our power level system was thinking about things in the context of what we talked about them as terms of vegetables, right? Interaction, card draw, ramp,
Yep.
and which ones were best in class for
Each of those categories.
each of those categories. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so like when we're talking about tutors, interaction, ramp, card draw, like Smothering Tithe, Ristic Study, best in class for those.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it would also help people evaluate cards if they saw like, oh, Demonic Tutor is on the game changer list because it is a very efficient tutor. Like that is
Yeah.
the category that it falls in. And so when I look at tutors, then I can say how close is this card that I'm
Yeah.
evaluating to Demonic Tutor, right?
Yeah. Eladomri's Call.
Yeah, or Diabolic Intent, which is
Sure.
a demonic tutor, but you also have to sacrifice a creature, which is not that big of a deal in most decks, right? So it's
And
like,
not a downside in others.
and not a downside in others. So it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe this is a staple. Maybe this is like closer to demonic tutor than not, and so maybe it belongs just in bracket 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even like Demonic Council. Demonic Council has been
Yeah.
nigh unto Demonic Tutor in our league, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not been hard to make that a Demonic Tutor.
Demonic Council is awesome. Yeah.
Such a sweet card.
It's so great.
Bullish on Demonic Council. Great
Yeah,
card.
that and Lively
Yeah,
Dirge were the two giant overperformers in our league.
Yeah, they went nuts. Shout out Kelton for thinking of both of those ones. But that's my take is that like
Yeah.
it would be helpful to maybe add more game changers, allow more game changers in bracket 3, and then say, hey, these are the best in class of these and are kind of staples, right? And
To give us something to point to say, is this close to a staple?
right, exactly. Which they already have done, but they've not necessarily like labeled them, categorized them, or whatever. And I think it's like it would be easy for people to say, oh, Defecting Swap, that's super sweet. And then you say, just so you know, Fierce Guardianship is on the Game Changers list because it is free. This is the same amount of free as Fierce Guardianship.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I like it. I love it. Well, this gave me a lot of food for thought. Like I said, this is something I've been thinking about for my own decks. I feel like I have maybe a new way of looking at those decks. I'm excited to revisit them, but I would love to hear from everybody listening. How do you evaluate high power cards that are not game changers, and how do they fit into brackets 2 and 3? How do you think they should fit into brackets 2 and 3? I'd be very curious to know what everybody's thoughts are.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think that's it for this week then. That's a shorter discussion than we normally have, but really enjoyable, and I think it's good to revisit the bracket system to keep it fresh on our minds every once in a while. So make sure to subscribe, join our Discord, and until next time, remember to always pay the one.